Okay, we're both here in Tara's office.
We're having some technical difficulties, so hopefully Jennifer can get us all lined on now. Here's Brad. And Brett.
I think all we need is Scott now, right?
Yep. Can you log out and log back in? Thank you. Okay, so just tell them that that's what we're doing and we're going to get started.
Okay, so we're just having one of our speakers log out and log back in, and hopefully he will show up. We didn't have these issues last week, so I'm not sure what's going on with the platform. We apologize. We'll be with you shortly. If we can get Scott Nicholson on, then we'll have our full panel up here. And I just want to remind the panel, when you're not speaking, to please keep your microphones on mute, just in case we don't pick up any kind of background noise that may be happening in the room that you're in. There you go.
Okay, so if you didn't hear me earlier, I am sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. We're very excited to have you here. I want to thank Brad, Brett, and Scott for being a part of our panel, for Carrie for moderating, and then also the digital gurus in Sierra Vista, and especially Katie Schroeder, who has worked very hard to make today possible. So with that, we will get started, and Carrie will start asking the questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I just kind of wanted to introduce again our panelists, who they are and what their involvement is regarding the referendum. So first we have Brad Strand. He's the superintendent of Breckenridge Public Schools. He is here for information purposes only. He cannot share an opinion. He cannot tell you to vote yes or no on any of these ballot items. Brett Johnson is also here. He is the school board president for Breckenridge. He is also has a neutral position as required by Minnesota state law. So he will be here for informational purposes as well. And we have Scott Nicholson, who's a member of the Vote Yes x3 committee. He will be here talking about why he is in favor of the referendum. We did reach out to try to find somebody who was willing to speak against the referendums. We typically try to have, you know, both sides of an issue. We could not find anybody who wanted to be on the panel. So we will definitely be taking questions from the audience. They can put their questions in the public chat. So I guess what I'll do first is let Brad and Brett, whoever wants to go, give a little kind of background and history on the initial referendum. I believe that was passed in 2013, and kind of what the school district's long-term plans were at that point, bringing us up to now and what we're looking at on the ballot right now. So Brad or Brett, whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, before I let Brett hop in on that one, I'd just like to, first of all, thank everybody for coming tonight. And I think what we're all experiencing is what teachers experienced when we made the switch to distance learning, and you had 25, 30 kids waiting to be taught, and we had technical difficulties. So I think as adults, we can all appreciate what our teachers and our students have really gone through the last almost 2 years, it seems like. But anyway, I'm going to send that microphone over to Brett to let him give a little bit of background on where we are now from where we were probably in 2013.
Yep, and thank everybody for attending, and really appreciate any questions that you could come up. Typically on the board, I try to play devil's advocate and come up with scenarios that we would like to have answers for. So if somebody would take care to take my place in that position, I would appreciate it. But way back in probably, it might have been 2010, 2011, 2012 timeframe that we started all this, because we started looking at our long-term facilities plan before there was such a thing. Right now, we're required to have one. We just went through and did an evaluation of our buildings and facilities in total to see where we were at. And that's how we formulated the question for our last referendum that was in 2013. And as part of that referendum question, we had give us some operating dollars that we can use for maintenance of our buildings. And we had a to-do list of items that we wanted to get done. The community was very supportive and voted yes, and we finished all those items. Our to-do list, our long-term facilities plan, still has many items on it. And as part of our decision back in 2013, we were to evaluate how long we were going to try to upkeep the buildings in the shape that we could with the dollars we had. We made a commitment for 10 years, and lo and behold, we're at 10 years out right now. So we went back to the community and said, okay, would you support us investing money back in our buildings again, adding on at the high school to have everything in one site, or a new building? And overwhelmingly, the support was for a new building, based on the dollars. And I purposely don't have the details of anything tonight. That's Brad's job, because I don't want any miscommunication. So if I round something to $10 and somebody else rounds it to $9, I don't want somebody saying, well, they don't know what they're talking about. They're not on the same page. So anytime we go to specific details, that's where I'm going to look to you, Brad. So thank you for that. I tend to ramble when I'm talking to myself too, so sorry about that. But our history of how we got here, 10 years out, we're at 10 years. We asked the community, they said build new. Part of our concern on the board is, did we get to all of our taxpayers when we did that survey? Or did we just get the supporters of build new, for example? So we've got a question on the ballot that seems to be the one that everybody supported most, and we'll see how the vote goes. Brad, anything you'd like to add to that?
I think I would add one thing, and that is on that survey, when we looked at adding on to the high school and then building new, that those numbers actually came in relatively close. But I think what the board decided when they were looking at the data was MDE recommends if it costs 60%, if it's 60% or more to renovate versus building new, then we should consider building new according to the MDE guidelines. And the one came in at about 76%, which would be, and it wasn't supported at all, and that is fixing up both buildings. It was about 71%. The total is about 60 million on adding on to the high school and then renovating the high school also. I want to make sure that people understand that it was a new elementary and also a renovation of the high school with some improvements to certain parts of that building. And that came in at 60 million. And that was 71% of the cost of building new, which is that 83.92 million. And so I think through, I would say some struggles at our board retreat in July, and that had come after 2 community engagement meetings and some task force meetings. I think then the board wrestled with that a little bit and came up with the decision of what they did. Maybe I'll stop at that point.
Both. So what I like to do at this point is just kind of read the first ballot question, because that is that'll be the first thing that the voters are going to decide on, and that is whether or not you want to renew the existing property tax referendum authorization that is $519.62 per pupil. That is scheduled to expire after taxes payable next year. And would you also want to increase the school district's general education revenue by $150.65 per pupil, subject to annual increase at the rate of inflation? The proposed referendum revenue authorization of $670.27 would first be levied in 2021 for taxes payable in 2022 and be applicable for 10 years unless otherwise revoked or reduced as provided by law. So the first question on the ballot is, shall the renewal of the expiring property tax referendum and the increase in general education revenue proposed by the Board of Independent School District number 846 be approved? And so that's a yes or no question. Is there anything else that either of you want to talk about on that first issue on the ballot?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on and just talk about how levies. So the first question is a levy, and the levies are for learning. So we took a school and we turned it upside down and shook it. All the stuff that falls out, that's the stuff that levies are used for. I also want to point out that levies are not impacted. The agricultural land and seasonal rec land and timberland are not impacted by an operating levy. So what Brett was referring to back in 2013, the reason our board went the route they did is because of what happened in Rothsay, which impacted many of our community farmers greatly, because they own land in the Rothsay district, and their bond land at that time was taxed at 100%. So our board, knowing that they wanted to do some long-term facilities maintenance, but also wanted to improve the technology infrastructure and offerings of our school district, went for an operating levy in 2013. So I just want to clarify that levies are for learning, and it isn't looking for a renewal, and then the increase of $150.65 per pupil. So if we had 620, that's K-12 pupils, not our preschool pupils, that would generate about $93,000 a year, approximately. And the point of that is to make sure that we keep our education, our technology sustainable. We ask our students to use their Chromebooks, and right now we have all of our students using Chromebooks, our 1 through 12. Our kindergartners are using iPads for the first time this year, but our 1 through 12 are using Chromebooks, and we ask our students to use those for 3 years. So if you get it in 7th grade, we expect them to use that Chromebook for 7, 8, 9, 10. They get a new one, and they're using that then for 10, 11, 12. And we all understand, I think, in this day and age with the technology that we're doing right now, which is pretty incredible. Thank goodness we had that system in place when COVID hit back in 2020, 2019, when all of a sudden things went a little bit sideways and we did have to be forced into some distance learning. But the technology is hard to keep that up because the state, the amount the state gives us is not keeping up with the inflation on that. And in addition to that, we would like to see the technology improve as well, not only the infrastructure, but also the monitors that are in a classroom. So a student could be on their laptop and they could be doing a presentation and they could just AirPlay it or Chromecast it to a monitor. Right now, we would have one of those, and we probably have to plug in because we still have the projectors in most of our classrooms that are hanging from the ceiling. So that's a big piece, is a technology piece. And the other piece, the renewal of that 519.62, that's helping with, on a school district, 75 to 80%, 70 to 75% is salaries. So to make sure we have the right programming, to make sure our class sizes are adequate so our students learn best as possible. We don't want our class sizes. We don't want teachers to have 30, 35 kids for every teacher. If we could keep our lower elementary at a smaller level so that when they're learning how to read, they have smaller class sizes. So class sizes would be an issue because that one generates about $320,000 of our budget. And I can't say enough at how well our board does at making sure that we don't spend more than we bring in. I know I'm new to the position, but as I look at the data and we looked at the last few years, I think in 2014, right when that happened, we spent a little more than we brought in. If you've been to any of my presentations, I've got a nice graphic on that. In 2018, it was the other way around. Our revenue is a little bit higher than our expenditures, but overall, usually they're right about the same. So our board has really done a nice job of maintaining a fund balance that most districts would be very envious of, not only in the area, but around the state. So we probably have about, I'd say 24 to 26% fund balance, which means we have about $2.2 million in the bank, so to speak, for the what ifs. Because you never know when things can go sideways and change or break down or whatnot. So that operating levy is to maintain our programming that we have, to provide class sizes as best possible for student learning, and then I think to make sure we have good programming in our fine arts and in our athletics and our after school programming for kids. I think all of that is very important for us to maintain, if not improve upon.
Great, thank you. I know we don't have all night to go through things, and I know there's a lot of information, so I want to kind of move on to our second ballot question. This one has to do with issuing new bonding to basically get rid of the old elementary school and build a new pre-K school. So the wording on the ballot asks if the school district should be authorized to issue general obligation school building bonds in an amount not to exceed $83,920,000 for the purpose of providing funds for the acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities, including but not limited to raising the current elementary school for construction of a new pre-K through 12 building and community gym. So who'd like to take that and give a little explainer on why that's needed?
I'll jump on that one again to start with, and the other two can hop on as needed. But when Brett referred to the facility study that was done by outside sources, and they looked at some of the needs of our buildings, especially in our elementary, with the boiler, the HVAC system, kind of on Band-Aids, kind of on limping by, so to speak. I know they fired it up the other day when the temperature dipped a little bit, and it was kind of making all kinds of noises, and it was leaking a little bit. So getting parts for that. But as far as I know, they were able to get that fixed again. During our board retreat, we had water that came through our ceiling and damaged our gym floor in that school. First of all, my first question is, when did it rain in July? That was my first thought. And then my second thought was, geez, we got a problem here. So with our gym floor really bubbled up, and it cost us about $18,000 to get that gym floor fixed. Luckily, we have insurance to help with that. And then actually just this first couple weeks of school, we had one of our kindergarten classrooms had water coming down where there was a leak in the roof. So between tuck pointing, window casements, really found that there has been some need for the building piece. And so the board decided, you know what, based on what Brett was talking about earlier, this is what came through on the survey. Let's entertain this, and let's ask the voters for looking at a pre-K through 12 one campus facility. Another part that came into play on that is the savings of about $220,000 in operational savings by having one facility with better efficiencies.
Do you have is there a proposed site if the voters decide that they want to go through with this? Do you have a site already identified, or are there multiple sites you're looking at?
You want me to go, Brad? Okay. We've looked at a few locations already and informally discussed with landowners. We've heard community concerns about north of 210 and safe routes to school, and adjusted our potential locations accordingly. Be assured that wherever we go, it's going to be safe for our students, staff, and families to visit the location. And if question number 2 that we're talking about does pass, we're going to be looking to the public to help us make some decisions. There's a number of reasons why we haven't specifically picked one location and said this is where it's going to be for sure. Financial commitment to that location, I can't even remember how long ago it was. We did start looking 3 years ago for a location that would potentially be a fit for our school building. We didn't ever land on one location that would be ultimately, this is where we want to be. We've got a number of items to consider. We've got traffic flow for vehicle accessibility. We've got infrastructure. Are the roads, flood protection, sewer, water, gas, electricity in place yet? And if not, what would that cost? Accessibility to the campus for our students, whether they want to walk or bike to school. Impact of our existing housing values around our current facilities and what that would look like if we went somewhere new. Potential business or housing developments around the location. And then what are ultimately, well, part of the decision is what is the plan of Breckenridge or Wilkin County for development. You know, we could pick a green space out in the middle of wherever, and it doesn't align with the big picture, and we haven't done ourselves any favors. So there's a number of items to consider when we're looking for a location. You know, I've heard horror stories where a location's picked and all of a sudden all the land around it's bought up, or you pick 3 locations and originally they have 3 different landowners and all of a sudden you're dealing with one on all 3 locations. Not that any of that would happen here, but there are a number of considerations that we've taken into effect to specifically not name a location yet until we have the funds to secure it.
Are the current, either of the current school locations in consideration for a new facility or not necessarily?
I don't, we haven't done the evaluation of the elementary site, but I don't think that would be big enough for what we plan to do. There is land accessible at the high school site, so that is a potential site, yes.
Okay, and can you remind, Brett, can you remind our audience the age of both of the schools?
Oh boy. Brad, you have those dates on here?
Yeah, the high school currently is 52 years old. I believe it was built in maybe 1969, completed. And the elementary started in 1934. And I think, and then there's been some additions to it. And the number that the MDE comes up with is our average age of our buildings is 60.77 years old when you average them. And when you put an addition on, so a 96, I believe, 96, 97, there was an addition put on both buildings. And there've been a few on the elementary along the way at a few other times as well. But I think the number I heard was 40% of it dates back to 1934. And comment on acreage, the elementary, I believe, sits on 8 acres right now, and the high school is sitting on 26 acres. And so the Minnesota Department of Education requires 40 acres for a K-12 facility. And so we would need to do some additions of land if it were at that location. The elementary, of course, that location, there's no possible way we could get to that number.
Right.
And I'm going to add one more piece to the comment on the building on question 2 is square footage. Actually, the new pre-K-12 facility, all the pictures you've seen, whether you've been in my presentation or just at the high school at a volleyball game or a football game or on a referendum website, is all just conceptual. It's just square footage. And the square footage is actually a $25,000 reduction from what we have currently, but that does include the basement at the elementary school right now. So I'm not sure what the square footage is on that, but we don't let students down there. I've had 2 tours of it. And I know there's been a few tours that some people have gotten to be on when we were doing just taking people around during our last community engagement meeting on September 13th. But maybe right sizing for our district. So our elementary, when we were doing the planning, so right now our Studio 5 and Studio 6, we have 2 teachers for that. When they were doing the planning with architects and with the designers, just for space wise, they have the same as what our elementary currently has. So like our 1st and 2nd grade, we call that the 1-2 crew. There are 5 teachers, so they are 5 classroom spaces. That's what's in the new building. Same with our 3 and 4-year-olds. We have a section for preschool. But in our high school and middle school, we are short spaced. So we would be looking at adding 2 classrooms and then 1 more flexible area where maybe there could be some team teaching. Maybe it would be used for presentations. If maybe we have a showcase night, and that might be one of our areas where students are doing their project-based learning in that area. So just to understand the space wise, we are reducing square footage from what we currently have, and elementary would be about the same. High school would be a little, or high school, middle school would be a little bit of an addition of the 2 classrooms and then 1 flexible space. I just want to make sure we add that and clarify that.
And there will be more gym space. I know that's always been an issue with Breckenridge schools. There never seemed to be enough gym space for practice time and all the activities that go on.
Yeah, if you're between pickleball, I saw pickleball had to cancel their not tomorrow night, Wednesday night, because volleyball will be hosting. And we have junior high going on at the other gym. It's not uncommon in our gym space for either someone to have to be practicing at 6:30 in the morning, or if you have late practice, maybe you don't get the gym until 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then you're getting off at 7:30, 8 o'clock on nights like that. And the other real tricky piece is our auditorium isn't big enough for our fine arts, for our music and our choir concerts to be. So they're going to have to sit up in our gymnasium. So then, if it's during basketball season or volleyball season, they have to relocate and either find a different place to practice, go early in the morning, or perhaps not be able to have a practice. So there is more gym space and more separated gym space. So there would be like a space for elementary that would be used for after school activities, our fun club. There'd be a place then for our middle school, after school, for our 7th and 8th grade, and then a competition gymnasium where our high school could be. But it's bigger than what we would have right now. So you could drop a curtain and you could have one team practicing different genders within the same area.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No,
Can
go
I
ahead.
add one more thing, Carrie?
Sure.
And that is the career and technical education. I think our board has really made a commitment to the career and technical education. In our area, no surprise, there are jobs waiting for these kids coming right out of high school and getting paid very, very well if they know how to weld. So, for example, in that area, we would make a substantial commitment to improving our career and technical education and making sure that these kids are exposed to the trades and working with their hands. And we know we have kids just right now, we have a teacher back in that program, and the kids are eager to be in the FFA program and to be in the welding and just all areas of that career and technical education.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the third ballot item and then be able to make sure we give some time for our audience members to ask any questions. And Scott, I'm sure you've got a lot you'd like to share about this proposed facility. So the third ballot question is asking if the district would be allowed to authorize to issue general obligation school building bonds in an amount not to exceed $11,290,000 for the purpose of providing funds for the acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities, including but not limited to the construction of a multi-purpose arena featuring seasonal indoor ice opportunities at the new pre-K through 12 site. So one of the things I'm hearing from the community is why does a school district need a sheet of ice? Like what's the combination? What's the dealio here? So I don't know if Scott, if you want to take that or have Brad start and you can kind of talk about it.
Well, I can certainly, give a little bit of information. I certainly cannot answer for the school board and all of the data that they've seen to get them to this point. But I am a hockey family. I have a son who's a freshman. He's involved in the BW Blades program and has been for quite some time. One of the exciting things for us is the hockey program has actually added another age group to the offering. So we have the option of playing bantams this year, which is great. Going from the Pee Wee level to what would be next would be junior varsity or varsity level. There's a big difference between those levels. You're not allowed to check and hit in the Pee Wee level, and you are at the high school level, and so that transition is quite difficult. And it's nice now that we've got an opportunity to play a couple years of bantams and get a little bit more gradual transition. But when you add a program, that program has requirements for practice time, and we were already very, very tight for ice time. So we have I could show you the schedule, but I would say it's either, well, tonight it was 8 o'clock start time. It is 8 o'clock start time tonight. Oftentimes it's 9:15. Sometimes we're splitting that 9:15 p.m. ice time with another group, which, I mean, we make it work. It's kind of what we do. We just make it work, but it's not ideal. I've been involved in different initiatives over the years, and most recently, previous to this, was part of a group that was looking at building a facility that had 2 sheets of ice next to it, within it. The point is, we need the extra ice. It helps free up practice time, not only for hockey, but also for figure skating. It provides greater access to the public in terms of open skate time and other programs that could be potentially part of it. Realizing that us taking on 2 sheets of ice would be aggressive. I think the school district's making a good decision here in pursuing a sheet. It gives us 2 sheets in town, gives us the opportunity to improve practice times, gives us the opportunity to host some tournaments and things that we wouldn't otherwise have the chance to do, and gives us home ice. I mean, we played Minnesota schedule when you get to the high school level, and we're playing those home games geographically in North Dakota. So, that just addresses the ice part. Hockey families' perspective. Facility, quite frankly, will provide some other opportunities for us. Hockey season's October to March. So non-ice season, we'll use that building to its fullest potential. Most likely we'll see some kind of turf floor covering brought in. So our spring sports, softball, baseball, golf can get early starts. We can have other events in there, maybe get our football team in there on inclement days in the summer, different things like that. So we really see question 3 as providing, some really nice amenities for our community. And we just think now is a good time to take advantage of them. I'll defer to the school board for further comment.
I think I would add on to that just a little bit, and that is that we are part of the Minnesota State High School League. The BW Blades are, and so again, to be playing in North Dakota versus playing in Minnesota, that's part of the rationale. The girls team was just gained a recognition, so the girls team is still a club team, but they gained recognition by the Minnesota State High School League. So now schools like Fergus, Detroit Lakes, Alexandria, Morris, maybe not Morris. But that combination of schools there can add the girls on to their schedule without impacting their QRF. Everybody's worried about their quality rating formula, and when it comes to the tournament time, so it's almost like a college exhibition game. So these Minnesota schools can add the BW Blades on the girls' schedule. So if they were maxed out at 26 games, they can play a 27th game that won't count against their schedule, so to speak. So that's a win for our girls, and it's also a win for the other towns because they get to play one more game. So that just went through the Minnesota State High School League in the last month or month and a half. Our board approved that along with Wahpeton, but they're also competing in that. So, but otherwise, I think, Scott, you summarized that quite well.
And just to make sure I'm understanding this, this third question is dependent on if the second question passes. If question number 2 fails, the 83.9 million in bonding, if that fails, then number 3 is a no-go. Is that correct?
That's 100% correct.
Okay. And just to remind people, if they vote yes on any or all of these questions, that is going to be an increase in property taxes, correct?
Really encourage people to check out the tax calculator so you know exactly how it impacts you individually. I mean, I've got a table here where I could walk through what the average home value is. And that table is also on our website. If you want to
give an example, I think that would be great.
Sure. So let's just pick, let's pick 150,000. $150,000 home. So question one, if it were to pass, they would see an increase in their annual property tax of $52.52 on $150,000. So question one, and if you look down on this same table below on ag land, those are all zeros. So this is only on, if you're a farmer, this is on your house, garage, and 1 acre. Same in town, whatever your value is. So that's an increase of $52.52.
Okay.
On question two, on $150,000, it'd be an increase of $487.12 for the year. Question three, it would be an additional $70.85. And on the farmland, on question two, and we can get into the ag to school credit here just a little bit, but on fiscal year 22, because there's an ag to school credit of 60%, a $4,000 acre would be taxed at $3.09 per acre for question two. And if it were non-homestead, it's double that, so $6.17. And the following year, when the ag to school credit hit 70%, then it would drop to $2.31 on a $4,000 acre, and on ag non-homestead, which is over $1.89 million of property value, then it would up to $4.63. But I would really encourage people that are unsure about that. You can type in your specific parcel on our tax calculator, which is on our school website, and you would get to that from the Breckenridge, Breckenridge Referendum 2021.org. That website, there's a big black box that says tax calculator. I would really encourage people to go to that. And we know people have been, because it keeps track of how many times it's been gone. And I think it's over 2,000 right now, like 2,100 or 2,200. So really encourage people to go to that tax calculator, so you know specifically how it would impact you.
Great, thank you so much. So we're starting to get some questions from our audience, so I'd like to just share those with you. Emily is asking, does question number 3 provide funding for the additional needs for the facility to be used during non-ice time? Example, does it include additional funding for turf or non-ice associated needs to keep the facility viable all year long? Or will additional funds need to be secured for additional non-ice needs?
Right now, in the proposal, right now, there is not a amount for turf to be put down in that. Right now, it would be ice, and that would be seasonal ice. And then if you take that up, you'd have a cement floor. So right now, that part is not included in the funding.
Okay, Scott, can you speak to what else would be included in this facility besides the sheet of ice? What other kind of space would be there for the community?
I should probably defer that to back to the school board. Yeah, I don't want to commit to something that they have not already.
Okay.
There's some space for locker rooms, concessions area, seating. I think the seating was maybe at about 500, but I'm not positive on that number. But basically locker rooms, referee space, coach's room, those type of extra areas, not anything beyond that.
Okay, so this wouldn't include, say, like community, like meeting space, anything like that?
No, this does not include that. This does not include any like community fitness workout areas as well. I know there was some confusion on that, but this area does not include that at all.
Okay. We have another question from Beth. She's asking if the ag benefit lasts for the life of the loan, which is 29 years. That's, I believe, the ag to school tax credit.
Yeah. I reached out to Paul Marcourt, representative in Dilworth, who teaches part-time, and he's been in there for about 21 years, I think, 20 years. And that exact same question. And his response is, I will say in my 21 years, I'm just going to read what he wrote to me. I would say in my 21 years in the legislature, this is one of the last laws that would be changed because it was passed on bipartisan basis, supported by both metro and rural members, and it really costs very little in comparison to our overall budget, so there's no reason to cut the program. In fact, if anything, I see the 70% going up than ever going down. I also reached out, and I've reached out to Jeff Backer, was also a co-author on this. I didn't realize that in 2015, and I have not heard back from him on that, but he serves our area. But I did also reach out to Jordan Rasmussen, who replaced Bud Nornis over in the Lakes area more. And his comment, and he's young on this, but he would say, I would say that it's unlikely that the legislature would repeal this credit. And if it would to repeal the credit, it's likely that the current bond's debt would be grandfathered in. Historically, that is what has happened in Minnesota when they've had a program. And if they were to take it away, they don't want to hold harmless the people that are getting the benefit.
Okay. We've got another question here. Do you know what the cost per year of the sheet of ice would be? And have you talked to other businesses concerning their costs or their maintenance for ice?
The number that was reported to us through engineers, so I talked about a savings of about $220,000 overall by having one campus. The sheet of ice, they figure, would cost the district $120,000 to operate. So we would subtract that from the 220. But I guess the hope would be, and you heard Scott talk about the need and the shortage for ice, is whether we run that or whether we would consult with like Head of the Red to run that with rental fees and with just ice usage time, whether it's the Bantams or whether it's the Pee-wees or whether it's the figure skaters or whether it's a tournament that comes into town and they're paying ice rental fee, that we would recoup that amount of loss to kind of break even, so to speak.
Okay. And then I've got a question going back to the school facility itself and the class sizes. A question from Shar. She says some voters have expressed concern about smaller class sizes today than when they graduated. I know that when I was in school, I think we had about 30 kids per class. This was in California. She's asking, can you explain why we need more or different space for current and future students?
21st century is different than when I was in school. So I graduated in 1986 from the land of Holly. And it is different in how kids are learning in the 21st century skills and flexible seating so that the tables have wheels on them and their chairs have wheels on them and they can collaborate differently. Try to prepare students better for future employment rather than sitting in a cubicle oftentimes. And there are still some jobs that sit in cubicles, but oftentimes it seems like the 21st century skills are not that. And so that would be one of a good reasoning on change in flexible seating and flexible learning spaces, along with better technology. I would also say, we talk about enrollment being, we've held steady for the last 5 years. There was a drop last year, and most school districts felt that drop of COVID. We were in that 700, 712, 719. And then last year we dipped down to 676. And this year we're at about 693, 695, depending. It fluctuates a little bit from month to month.
Thank you. Emily has asked, Scott, did you have something to add? Sorry, you're on mute. There you go.
I was just going to add one thing to that because, that is some feedback that we've heard quite a bit is class size. And one of the things that I want to point out is how the demographics have changed. If you think about, when the high school was built, somebody voted a bond referendum in the mid 60s to build that high school for the first graduating class. And yeah, they had more students per class than we do. But the reason for that isn't necessarily because Breckenridge is shrinking. I sit on Port Authority. I have access to some reports and some data through my connections there and through Southern Valley Economic Development Authority and some other things. And what we're seeing in Breckenridge is overwhelmingly a change in household structure. We're not seeing families of 5, 6, 7 people anymore like we were as few as 50, 60 years ago. Right now, it's not uncommon for families to have 1 or 2 children, where back in those days, most families were having multiple children. And so, class size, our town is about the same size. If you drive around, you see we have new housing starts. Our geography is bigger than it used to be as a city. It's just that our population has aged a little bit, partly because a lot of jobs A lot of students left in the 70s, 80s, 90s because there were not, you know, a number of high paying, in demand kind of jobs in our area. We're a very stable community. In fact, I would argue that we're probably growing today and on the verge of a potential growth spurt with some things that are going on region wide. So yes, we're graduating fewer, but that doesn't mean these kids coming through in 2040 don't deserve a good education. We think that right now is the right time to do this for several reasons, but you can't say that the class of 2022 is less valuable because there's 50 of them than the class of 72 because there were 100. I just don't. I mean, I understand it, but you can't vote that way. We got to do what's right for our children. We got to do what's right for the future of our district, and right now we got the opportunity to do something really fantastic.
If I could chime in, you know, the majority of our board was involved in that super school grant we applied for. We had to envision what the school of the future would look like, different learning spaces, portable classrooms, things that move. You're not just stationary in a row of desks anymore. So we had done a lot of research. We got quite far in that grant process. I forget what, did we make top 10 or something like that? So we did a ton of work on envisioning what the school of Breckenridge future would look like. And now we've got the opportunity to incorporate some of those items that we've discovered before.
So there's another question here that goes back to the sheet of ice. They're asking if the school district intends to have a Breckenridge youth hockey program.
I'll take that. I'm a hockey family, but I'm not involved in the administration of the hockey programs. Okay, so if I misspeak, hopefully somebody who is will either, you know, jump in the chat and correct me. But there are several different programs behind what the public sees as hockey in the Twin Towns. We have a very strong youth program, which is supported by a nonprofit on the Breckenridge side called Breck Hockey and a nonprofit on the Wahpeton side called WAP Hockey. My understanding is that's pretty much a legal structure so that we can fundraise through charitable gaming on both sides of the river. So there is a very large youth hockey program in our Twin Towns. You start at the mini mite and mite level. There are we have some really strong numbers coming in those programs. In a meeting I was in last spring, sounds like my son and his classmates are going to struggle, but starting about the time my son's going to graduate, we're going to be a really good hockey program. The community is going to want to get behind that program and start going to some games because there's going to be some really fun hockey played in this community in the next 4 or 5 years. So we're really excited for it. Would Breckenridge ever do its own youth hockey program? I doubt it. It's just it's one of those programs where we need to consolidate. We need to work with our neighbors. It's a great program. I'll use another forum to campaign for hockey.
Thank you, Scott. Another question I had, just that we had written down earlier, and maybe Brett or Brad, you can answer because we've already talked about the bond referendum. Just kind of explain why this is the best time. The current referendum is set to expire after 2022. That could just be let go, and you know, nothing new, nothing could change. Why now? Why do you think now is a good time to ask your voters for more money?
I'll start that one, Brett, and then you can hop on. As far as right now, interest rates are historic lows. And so when the PowerPoint that I had put together earlier had the average last year 30-year interest rates being at 4.64%. And right now, well, when we did that graphic, it's 2.14%. So interest rates are very, very low. I will say when you plug into that tax calculator, it's probably closer to 3% because they want to make sure that we err on the side of being safe rather than, no, we don't have enough. So I would just comment on that it's close to 2% or around 3% on 29 years. About is what they figured in. Could be a little less than that. If we can get in, that'd be great. So, and if you look at, and this is from our financial consultants, Baird, if interest rates were to go up 1% on a project of this size, if interest rates went up to 4% from 3%, let's just say, they estimated it would be about $16 million in increased cost. And the other piece that I would mention is inflation, which we're all feeling inflation right now. There's no doubt about that. When you go buy groceries or you go buy gas or just about anything, you're seeing and feeling inflation. Construction inflation has averaged about 5% over the last number of years, maybe a little lower, maybe a little higher. So by waiting a year, construction costs would be increased by about $4.5 million on this project. Brett, anything you want to add more to that?
Is there a perfect time to build? I would say no. Is there a good time to build? We're probably have been in it for a couple of years to take advantage of our economic stability that we have in a predominantly farmers market. If I said that right, you know what I mean. Crop prices have been decent. This year was kind of, when it wasn't raining, I was getting nervous. Is this the right time to be asking? Things turned out pretty good for the year overall, considering the amount of rain we had, but we're not out of the woods. We need some fall rain to get some subsoil moisture back to keep our farm economy strong. So I don't know that there's a perfect time to ask for a bond referendum. All I know is it's historically not going to get cheaper as we go along. At some point, we're going to have to pull the trigger and do it. Based on the survey that we sent out, community's telling us this is the time to try. Want to be clear, we're having school next year, regardless of if any of those questions pass or not. If question one fails, we're going to have to look at doing some hard cuts though, at some point. If question two doesn't pass, we're going to go back to our voters and saying, okay, what's next? Do you want to look at the add-on scenario, or do you want to maintain our existing facilities for a while longer? And if a while longer, how long? So we know how much, 5 or 5 years.
Are there any other questions from our audience members tonight that haven't already been answered? Here's a question asking, do you think with the shutdowns of COVID to the small businesses here, is it too much to ask to put this on the residents right now? That's for anybody. Sorry, Brett, your connection's cutting out a little bit.
Carrie, I can try and
Okay.
Respond to that question. And I'm going to speak to it just strictly from the perspective of, an individual who's involved on the supporters of this. We know that this is a large ask, especially for some of our, large farms, some of our large commercial entities that own a lot of property. This is even a large ask for that individual that's on a fixed income, and even a small increase to that monthly budget requires him or her to make some kind of a sacrifice. We know that there's a cost, and everybody, we're asking people to share in that cost. But what we're finding is, as supporters, is people are finding value in investing in the district and investing in the community. For a community of our size, our school really is our tangible identity. We're the ones that represent our community in other towns. You know, we're what visitors from other communities see when they come to our town. And so while we are asking folks to increase their property taxes, and we realize that that could create some discomfort for some folks, we think there's value in investing in our future. We think it's only going to provide positive benefits to not only the district, but to the community and the region as a whole. And you know, we get folks that say, well, I'm doing this because I've lived in Breckenridge all my life, and I went to Breckenridge High School, and I really want to give back. I really appreciated the time that I had in this community or in the district, and I want to give back. We've had people say they're doing this because they're looking forward. I've got a brand new baby at my house, or my kids are about to have kids. I want them to have the kind of quality, education and the quality community experience that I had growing up in Breckenridge. I think, from a business case, if you really want to talk to a business owner, boy, I think when you look at the favorable rate environment that we're in, when you look at the fact that construction costs are only going to go up, we know interest is only going to go up. We don't know how fast and when it's going to start, but we know those things are going to happen. This is going to get more expensive if we wait. We have a very fortunate opportunity that those couple of factors have come together with this egg to school credit at the same time, and really providing us a nice opportunity to get this done. And quite frankly, there's another group who just look at this purely from the economic potential. If the school district is looking at putting up a new campus, that's going to take other investment. That's going to undoubtedly force the city into expanding its footprint. I know we're getting close to running out of lots again. We're going to have another housing development. More housing development means more families, more households to come to that business. Okay, this just really, there's a lot of us out there on the support side that really think this is going to be a positive economic driver for our region. Yes, we realize there's a cost, but we see the value that it returns by paying that cost. And
there's just a comment from Jay, not necessarily a question, but he's just commenting that with a sheet of ice in Wapton and hopefully one in Breckenridge, our community would be posed to host some 3-day tournaments, which again would bring in additional revenue for hotels, restaurants and shopping. So that's another positive for those who are in support of this. There's another comment that somebody's happy with the school board, that the right leaders are in place. Many school boards don't have that kind of makeup right now. So are there any more questions from the audience? We're going to have to wrap it up here pretty shortly. I wanted to remind everybody that the election is on Tuesday, November 2nd, and it will be held at the Breckenridge High School location from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. So if you live in the Breckenridge School District, you can certainly get down there and vote that day. Again, a vote yes on any of these items will be an increase in your property taxes, just so you are aware of that. The first question, just to summarize, asks if the expiring property tax referendum should be renewed at an increase of $150.65 per student. The second question asks if the school district should issue at most $83.92 million in building bonds to fund the raising of the current elementary school and the construction of a new pre-K-12 school and community gym. And the third question, which would rely on question 2 being passed, asked if the school district should issue at most 11.29 million in building bonds to fund a single sheet ice arena and connected to the new facility.
Can I just
So,
add one thing on that, Carrie?
yeah, sure.
And that is, we talked a little bit about ag to school credit as far as length and longevity of it, but because we are about 70% agriculture in our area, and fiscal year 22, the state would pay 60% credit for farmers, not for their house, garage, 1 acre. They're just like everybody else, but on their ag land. And then 70% in 2023. That would mean in 2023 and beyond of this project, principal and interest, 48.73% of this project would be paid by state aid. And then I did have somebody just message me. I don't know if it's from here, but they had heard, or that we said that there's turf in the ice arena. That is not true. That's not in our budget. This is the first I've heard of it. You know, could it be somewhere down the road? Perhaps, but right now that's not in the school budget, the district's plans. And lastly, I would say, having worked for this board for a short amount of time, they're going to look at things. They can spend up to that amount. If they can spend less than that, our board is a type, I think, that would spend less than that. And maybe Brett, you want to just speak to that just a little bit. Yeah.
Yep, I keep using that example of the free contract that we sent you back to the drawing table 3 different times for. So even we're here to do what's right for our students and the taxpayers of our district. I would encourage everybody to vote, no matter what direction you're leaning. We want to hear clearly from our voting population what direction they want us to go. Did I lose track of the question you wanted me to respond to? I've been locked up for a little while, so that's been sitting there.
And then I would just also mention, Carrie, that there is extended voting hours. On Tuesday, tomorrow night, people can vote until 6 p.m. On Thursday, people can vote until 6 p.m. And on November 1st, they can vote until 6 p.m. in the district office with Kathy Affield. They can walk in and vote. The whole absentee, putting it in the mail back and forth with 7 days, that could be tricky. So you can come to the school. And then on election day, there is one polling place, and that's at the high school. That's just the way it is on a special election. And people would come in door 13, which is in the southwest corner, I guess would be a way to say it, kind of across from the pool area. And that's where people can vote. And that will be starting at 10 a.m. until 8 p.m. on November 2nd.
Thank you. And there is one last question that I came across. Some people have thought of the elementary school as a historical monument. Is there any way to save the building or a part of it? If, say, everything passes and the district decides to move forward with the new facility, would there be any way to save part of it, kind of the way that the city saved, part of that facade from City Hall? Has anything like that been talked about? Scott?
I'll make a couple comments here, and then I'll defer to the board because I know they have more specific direction. But I do kind of empathize with that sentiment. Personally, I've always been a history fan, and I was interested in architecture as a career at one point in my life, so I get it. I was pretty disappointed with myself for not trying to fight a little harder to save City Hall next door, and a little disappointed with what we ended up with through no fault of the people that planned it. I think we could have saved a historic building there. We don't get to decide what happens to the elementary school building today unless we pass it on Tuesday the 2nd. Now, if we pass it on Tuesday the 2nd and there's another entity, group, club, whatever, that could use the property, there's a process in place for purchasing that from the district and potentially repurposing it.
Okay.
But we can't have that discussion today until we pass it and know what we're doing on November 3rd. And the other point of feedback that I've gotten when I make those comments is, if it's good enough for somebody else, how come it isn't good enough for us as a school? And that really comes down to educational standards. Minnesota Department of Education has some rules in place for us. And we've got several issues that school district that make it not cost efficient to run a school there. It may work as something else for someone else, but we don't get to have that discussion today unless we pass this next Tuesday. So from a vote yes perspective, I mean, gosh, I'd love to save the building. If we can't, I hope we can incorporate parts of it into whatever we end up with. Let's move the bell to the main entrance and make a real nice grand entrance or something. Let's put some architectural elements of the new school in there that take inspiration from the old one. Need 21st century learning is great. The environment. So I really do.
Scott, you're breaking up a little bit. I just want to get this one last question in, then we're going to have to wrap it up here. And this will be, I think, more towards Brett. Has the school board already been discussing, what the major concerns are if this doesn't pass? What are the things you're looking at that would have to be considered for cuts? On what scale are you looking?
We have not. If question one would fail, we still have a year to go back before we have to make those deep cuts to make up that money. Hopefully we don't have to go there.
Right.
I've been through that before. I think back when Greg East was our superintendent, we had to cut $1 million from the budget, and it wasn't a fun time. You're affecting families.
Right.
We don't want to be in that position if we can avoid it. So we control what we can control. We worry about what we can control today.
Sure.
What happens on November 3rd is dependent on our voters, which direction we go. But like I said before, we're still having school next year, so we will figure it out.
Well, I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Brad and Brett and Scott, if you're still there. I know your connection's not working real good right now. I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate all of our attendees. Looks like we had a good turnout tonight and some good questions. And we will be, this whole event has been recorded, and the next couple days we'll be able to put it up on our Facebook page and hopefully get it onto our website as well. So if folks want to see it that weren't able to participate tonight, they'll be able to do that. So thank you all for joining us tonight, and have a good evening, and good luck with your referendums. Bye-bye.